Welcome to the show,
Tech genius.
guys. Ozzie
Thank
Smith
you.
is here, the legend, 13-time Gold Glove, 15-time All-Star, Hall of Famer. Ozzie Smith, you know him from the Cardinals, an absolute legend. His son joins us here tonight as well, Nikko Smith, Dirty Muggs, R&B singer. You may know him from American Idol season 4. He was one of the top contestants that year, and he's still going strong with his performances, also dabbling into acting as well. It's an honor to have you both here tonight. Welcome to the show, guys. How's everything going?
Great, man. It's great to be on with you, and it's nice that we could add my son to the mix as well. He
Absolutely. It,
probably
it goes right with the show.
knows a lot more about music than I do.
Maybe a little bit more.
So we can start off with this because you two are really connected here, father and son, the bond. You could see that the hard work has paid off, Ozzy being a father and him being a dedicated musician. So I hear these stories all the time about when your son was singing, it sounded like he was dying upstairs. So when did you realize, when did you realize that your son was a phenomenal singer?
Well, it wasn't until I went to, when you're playing, sometimes you miss all of the birthdays and all of the performances and things that go on in their lives. And I can remember being able to make a performance one day, and I heard him sing Ben. Ben, the two of us need to look no more.
You can see where
And,
I
and
get it from. There you
yeah, well,
go.
but that was really kind of the first time that I realized that, that there was something there. And at that time, I think he was 9, 10 years old when you
hmm
did that.
Yep.
Yeah.
hmm
So, that was really kind of the beginning of, or my realizing that, hey, that there was something there other than just sport. So yeah, that was pretty cool, and I truly enjoyed that.
hmm And Nico, what was the deterring factor? Because you also liked mixed martial arts, Bruce Lee flicks early on. You had your own trainer with kickboxing. So what made you
hmm
fully transition to the music side of things, especially when you were incorporated into the dance school that your mom signed you up for?
Yeah, I think for me it was just getting older and I was getting, more attention from the girls for singing than I was for, doing karate. So I was like, let me make this switch. But now I met a couple people, um, so a couple mentors in music. One guy in particular who when I met him, I was about 15 and I joined this group called Team 11. And that's when I really started taking music seriously and started really working on my craft. So it was about 15. And I discovered groups like Drew Hill and Jodeci and stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably when I really, really started focusing on the music.
Is it true that you had your hair dyed blonde too, like Cisco at one point?
At one point, yes, I did. Why are you bringing up old stuff? No, I'm just playing. I did. But yeah, growing up, trying to figure out, what your style is and taking influences from here and there. So, just trying to find a person who I was artistically. Yes, I did have the Cisco blonde hair. I also had the silver hair too. So,
Okay, yeah. So you mixed and matched there with
yeah, yes,
the.
indeed.
I think what's so important is the window of opportunity that your father often speaks about. And Ozzy, I want to get into your window opportunity, then we'll get into Nico's. Is that once a player broke his leg back when you were playing JV and varsity early on in your career, that was your opportunity and you seized the moment. And right there, you filled in for the shortstop.
Yeah, it was one of those moments, and I think it was at that time. We're often asked, were there moments where you didn't feel like it was going to work or that it was working? And certainly at that particular time, I was playing on the JV team at the time, and I didn't feel like there was much movement because I never got drafted out of high school, and that was a little disappointing in that I felt that there were some players around me, and one in particular was Eddie Murray, who I played with in high school, who got drafted out of high school and stuff. So my road to the big leagues was a little bit different. I had to go to a little small school in Central California as a walk-on baseball player and made the JV team. And just at the time that I felt that it was time for me to give it up and move to something else, the JV guy got hurt. I can remember calling my mom and saying, "Hey, I don't think this is working out for me." And she called my high school coach. He called me up and said, "Hey, that's the best place for you. You're gonna weather this storm and you're gonna stick it out. And sure enough, a couple days later, the varsity shortstop got hurt, and um, as the saying goes, I never looked back, and I stepped into that window of opportunity and took advantage of it.
Your uncle, you got this plastic ball from your uncle that you used to play
Hmm.
with, and you used to sleep with this glove behind your pillow at night. When did
Hmm.
you get your first glove? I want to hear the story about getting your first glove.
Well, the very first glove that I had, or I called a glove, was a brown paper bag that I rolled down on my wrist, and I had a tennis ball that I used to throw against the wall all the time, and um, working on my forehand, not knowing that um, it was something that was enhancing the skill that I was born with. I also had a peaked roof, and I thought I was fast enough to throw it up on one side and run around to the other side and hope that the gutter would catch it and give me a chance to catch it before it hit the ground. And I never did, but it was that type of determination that made me the player that I ultimately became. But it was about spending a lot of time with myself, learning how to backhand the ball and oh, I'm sorry, my
Oh, it's
mute, my,
fine.
my forehand. Hopefully, I didn't lose you guys there.
Oh, we're
No,
fine.
you
We
here.
got you still.
Working with my forehand and stuff, and then there was we lived across the street from a recreation center where there were always broken bats and stuff. And some of the guys, I think the first glove that I had was one that was left by one of the high school teams or high school players there. And that glove, I took, it was real beat up and torn and stuff. And my first real glove I didn't get until I went away to a college prep. And I got this, what we call a six finger, a trapeze, and it had the name Stan Musial in it. And I took that glove and I kept that glove right through uh, my rookie, my first year in pro ball and in A ball. And then when I got to the big leagues, the glove was so worn and torn um, that the Rawlings took it, and I wish I knew where that glove was now, but they had discontinued making the trapeze, so they started making the trapeze again, and I think it's probably still one of their most popular brands of gloves.
Wow, absolutely. And you mentioned Stan Musial, just a total legend. We all know who he is. Nico, I wanted to get into the story of being out in Korea with Stan because I heard this is where you learned how to use chopsticks. So talk to your story about this.
uh, yeah, Dad, right. We had went to Korea. I think did we go to a couple different places
Yeah, we went to Korea and
in
Japan,
Japan? Yeah.
and you got a chance. This was after the season, and we had a chance to travel a little bit. And I didn't even know he remembered this. He was so
Oh
young.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know it's crazy the stuff you remember, right? No, because we were I think it was like a hibachi place.
Hmm.
Um and we were out there and it was my first time trying to use the chopsticks and he was trying to teach me how to use them and trying to get it down, still not getting it. So they ended up giving me a pair that had like a rubber band tied around it. So I was easily able to, pick up the food with that. But yeah, man, Stan was a great guy, always telling jokes, always playing the harmonica. Um, so yeah, it was a great experience. That's one of the probably the main thing that I remember about that trip.
Wow. This is truly legendary. Another legend with the Cardinals, of course, and just getting more into the early on career here with getting to the Padres because originally you were drafted by the Tigers, and then you wanted a certain amount of money, you didn't get it, but then you had to go out and play in Iowa, and
Uh, yeah,
then
I was a great businessman. Uh,
yeah.
Max, you know, it was 1976 that I got drafted by the Detroit Tigers, and I finished 3 years of my schooling, and I told my mom I'd get my education. So when they came to me and they offered me, I think I got drafted in the eighth round. They offered me $8,500, and this is the same year that they drafted Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell. The year before, I think they had drafted Jack Morris. So they offered me the $8,500 and a bus ticket to Lakeland, Florida, where the Tigers train. And so, in my infinite wisdom, I said to myself, you know, this is my best bargaining year. So if they don't give me 10 grand, they're not going to take a real good look at me. So I went back to them and I asked them for another $1,500, which they say they didn't have in the budget. And so this is where, as a player, you gamble on yourself. Not many college seniors get drafted, but now at least I'm on the board. People know that I'm there. So they said they didn't have it in the budget. So I went back to school in hopes of getting drafted again my senior year, which I did by the San Diego Padres. And being the good businessman that I am, Max, I signed for $5,000 and a bus ticket to Walla Walla, Washington, where I started my professional career.
And you had a brand new car that you were happy about
I
too.
did. I bought me a Chrysler LeBaron burgundy with Corinthian leather, and
Ooh.
that was the that was really kind of the start of it, because I think that as young kids, you always dream about being able to buy yourself a car and do something for your family. And I think that for a lot of us that play professionally and go through the drudges, the wars of having to fight to get to where we're going, failure wasn't an option, because if I fail, it meant that my family failed. So there was another real driving force behind making it, and not just making it, but being a good, sound, consistent big league ball player. And that was always my goal. Not sitting around saying that, hey, one day I want to be a Hall of Famer. I don't think I didn't think that was very realistic, but I think that it's your it's your work. It's the work ethic. It's the work that you put in
Mhm.
that ultimately determines whether or not you're even in a position to be able to do that. And that was always the goal, to work hard to be the very best that I could be every day. I was lucky enough to get that same message being preached by my mom, by my high school coach, by my college coach, all of the people that I was surrounded by that helped me get to where I ultimately got. And it was a real learning experience, but I wouldn't change it. People ask me, what would you change? I wouldn't change a thing. I'm a strong believer in manifest destiny. What's meant to be will be. And this was my road. This was the road that I had to travel to get to where I am.
Mhm. You get what you put in.
That's right. You only get out of it what you put in. If you don't put anything in, you shouldn't expect anything in return. And that's life.
That really is. Nico, what was the most important advice that your father gave to you early on when following his music career? Because his mother instilled in him that it's not how big the person is, it's how big your heart is. So, what's that advice that your father gave to you for this music journey that you've taken?
Some of the principles he was just talking about, believing in yourself, doing the work, actually, putting in the time. If you really love something, you have to put in that time to make yourself better. Um, and like like who was talking about earlier, when he came up was like banging on the door, like, you dying up here. That was him, throwing the ball over the house and trying to catch it on the other side. That was my version, like me trying to do all of these runs and sing loud. So it was just I mean, he gave me a lot of good advice, but I think the main thing uh was just, stick to it, work hard, and let your work speak for itself.
And it has. It's brought you this far with American Idol. We're going to get into
Mhm.
that, and we're going to keep weaving here to you and your father. And we got to get to the greatest defensive play of all time with the Padres. And they hit you the day after here. It's insane when I read reports about it, in that it was so natural to you that you really didn't know what you were doing. You just did it.
Yeah. A lot of times, Max, when you're in it, you're just doing it. And as an everyday player, every day is different. So I'm putting in the work. I'm putting in the work. So my job is to cover whatever mistake a pitcher may make. And so on this particular day, I think it was a Thursday afternoon. Randy Jones is pitching. We're playing the Atlanta Braves, and Jeff Burrows is the hitter. And Jeff Burrows hits a bullet up the middle. And one of the things the abilities that I was born with was the ability to dive and scramble to my feet. And on this particular play, when I dove, the ball went back. I was parallel to the ground. and the ball went back the other way. And the only way for me to get it, my glove hand was gone. So the only way for me to get it was to reach back with my bare hand, which I did. And the ball stuck. I scrambled to my feet and threw him out at first base. Like I say, that this is what I do. It's part of the reason I think people call me the wizard. Um, so the next morning I'm listening to the radio and the guy says, I think I saw the greatest play I've ever seen in my life. And I'm saying, wow, that's what I do, so that's no big that was no big deal there at all for me. It was what I did. And so I was just blessed to be in the right position at the right time. And that was really the thing that kind of kicked things off for me as far as my career was concerned. And um, back then, there wasn't a whole lot of video and stuff, and we were lucky that we were playing the Atlanta Braves, and they got a little bit of the video there and stuff, and the rest is history.
Especially too when you were getting the ads in the paper from your agent, the help wanted and things like that when you
Well,
were trying to.
this was contract negotiations, and I had a pretty slick agent and stuff, and I had a no trade clause as a 3-year player, which was kind of unheard of back then. And so when the contract came up, Mrs. Kroc um, of the McDonald's franchise and stuff, part of the negotiation was that she was going to check with her gardener to see if he had any openings. So, hello, hello world. Yeah. So that's some of the things that we've all had to deal with, and that for me was nothing like what some of the other guys had to deal with in their rise to play professionally. So I thank those guys for affording me the opportunity to play this great game, and I had a wonderful time doing it for 19 years.
You did. And Whitey Herzog comes over, convinces you that you're the missing piece to this team to win a World Series. And you
Mhm.
do that in 1982. Did this bet really happen between you two where for the
Mhm.
fly ball, you had to pay
That's
him a
right.
dollar and then
That's
vice
right.
versa for the ground balls, you pay him one?
That's right. It was, people are motivated in different ways, and I certainly was. Anytime I hit a fly ball, this was part of my problem in San Diego. I can remember I'd had no real formal teaching. I could put the ball in play, but I didn't hit with any power or anything. So anytime there was a fly ball, they said, well, he's trying to hit home runs. Well, I was smart enough to know that I didn't have the power. I was not a home run hitter. And so anytime the ball went in the air, they said, oh, this guy he'll never hit in the big leagues. Well, when Whitey came over, I realized that this was going to be the opportunity of a lifetime because for even us as players, we always question whether or not we're as good as we think we are.
Mm.
And uh, getting traded to the Cardinals, and especially for a player the caliber of a Gary Templeton, who to me was probably one of the most talented players to ever don a pair of spikes. True 5'2" player, power, average, could run like a deer, had a cannon of an arm. I mean, the whole package. And the one thing that Whitey told me, he says, I want you to just be yourself. Don't try and be something that you aren't. So when I came over, I can remember him giving me or allowing me to spend some time with a guy by the name of Chuck Hiller, then later Dave Ricketts, who taught me the importance of staying on top of the ball or what it meant. When I talked to the hitting coach in San Diego, I asked him, I said, well, where should my hands be if I'm going to hit the ball up the middle? He said, don't worry about that. Just aim up the middle. And so that was my that was my teaching in San Diego. And then when I came to the Cardinals, I had Chuck Hiller and then Dave Ricketts, and they taught me the importance of staying on top of the ball and not hitting the bottom part of the ball. And Whitey, as an incentive, said that for every fly ball that you hit, you owe me $1, and for every
Hmm.
ground ball um, you hit, well, every fly ball he gets $1. Every ground ball he had to pay me. So I learned very quickly how to keep the ball out of the air. And midway the season, he said, "This bet's over."
Amazing. It
Yeah.
really is an amazing story just listening to this. And was there anything, Nico, that you were able to take away from your father and just learning about the contract negotiations that he went through with your side in entertainment in the music industry? Because we know how a lot of these music deals can be, they'll rob an artist blind. So, is there things that you've taken into consideration learning from what your father went through in contracts and his career into your world?
Um, Later on, as I got more into the music business, yes, but initially I was the same great businessman that he was early on when it came to contracts and stuff. But when you do American Idol, like they have you sign a contract like every single step of the way. So at that point, you're pretty much kind of locked in. Like if you don't sign it, then you're not going on to the next stage. But since then, um, I've learned, you know, what a good contract looks like, what a bad one is, to get out of it what I need. I have to put that in there and so on and so forth. And yeah, so it's one of those things you live and you learn, just like he did. Um,
Exactly.
but going back to his play. So that play in um San Diego,
Hmm.
the diving and the catching the ball. So I always go back and I look at like his old highlight reels and some of the plays that he used to make. And I always think to myself, like, okay, like if he would have made just that one play and he dove for it, caught it with his other hand, got up, threw it. Like people would have still been talking about it, but if he had done nothing else after that, it'd have been a different story. But that's the difference between being great and just like a fluke, because moving forward after that, he's still like, and you're a baseball fan, so I'm sure you go back and you look at some of those highlight reels, some of the other stuff that he did, and
Oh, it's
diving and
insane.
jumping up and throwing. Nobody was doing that. Nobody still is doing that.
No.
So it's one of those things that for me, like going back and looking at how um not only naturally talented he was, but how hard he worked to continue to level up is one of the main things that I take away from his career and try and incorporate into mine.
No, an amazing career, and just what's so amazing too, and we're gonna get into this, is the injury. The when you tore the rotator cuff. It's always poetic because with me doing my research online, you got your wrist broken by a pitch against the Padres, and was it also that you tore your rotator cuff against the Padres as well?
Yeah, I think it was diving back into first base. I think it was the Padres that were in town. When I did that, I started some impingement in my shoulder and eventually tore the rotator cuff. And it was one of those things that when I was in college, I had a trainer who I knew had worked with pitchers on external, internal rotation and all of those things when they had arm problems.
Mhm.
So I remember all those things. So I traveled with what we call surgical tubing that I always had that to exercise with. So it's all about strengthening the muscles around the rotator cuff to protect it as much as you possibly could. And to date, people ask me, they say, well, what was your greatest accomplishment? My greatest accomplishment to date was being able to play from 1985 to 1996 with that torn rotator cuff. And I didn't get the rotator cuff worked on until after I retired because it was starting to affect my golf game, Max.
Oh.
So my priorities, I had my priorities, but the fact of the matter is, it was going out there every day and still being able to play at a high level, knowing that I may have had only one long throw in me that particular day. Now, the other thing too was that I played on AstroTurf, which allowed me to bounce the ball a little bit more. But the one thing that you learn when something like this happens is you learn how to round the ball. The other instincts that you have are kicked in, the other skill sets. And so rounding the ball a little bit more, getting more momentum going to the base that I was going to throw to were things that I did that allowed me to continue to play and play at a high level. And I tell people that winning is much more than making a great play or getting a big hit. It's about being there for your teammates and especially pitchers from a psychological standpoint. Psychologically, my being there, maybe at 60 to 70%, may be better than somebody else at 100. So just your presence sometimes, I think, um, keeps those guys their level of confidence where it should be.
Absolutely. And you were able to do this and even continue to level up, as your son said, that you level up every year. And I think what's insane too is because everyone says that you're the greatest defensive shortstop of all time, is that the offense that you were able to put up is a hitter. Because once you reach 2,000 career hits, you
Mhm.
really work to prove to the league that I'm also a big offensive shortstop as well. And I could be counted on, especially with that huge home run
Yeah.
against the Dodgers.
Let me say, Max, I think that our generation of player, our goal was to be as well-rounded as we could possibly be. I didn't want to be noted simply as a one-dimensional player. So though I may not hit the ball out of the ballpark, these young kids sometimes the first thing they ask, well, how many home runs did you hit? Well, it's not necessarily about hitting home runs. Home runs and things come when you're doing the little things every day. Somebody on the team, if the team is going to win consistently, somebody has to set the table. You have to have table setters. You have to have people who um, were good at driving runs in from third base with less than two down, um, being able to get that guy over when needed. These were the little things that I was always good at, but they're not the ones that grab the headlines. And so I continued to work. I had a batting cage put in my basement and learned to hit the ball the other way and learned to pull the ball. In 1985, I met a guy by the name of Mackie Shilstone who took Michael Spinks from a light heavy to heavyweight. And when I met Mackie, I told him the one thing that I wanted to accomplish was being able to put two halves together. I would get off to a great start, but midway during the season at 155, 160 pounds, that was all gone. So Mackie was able to help me through nutrition and weight training that allowed me to put two halves together. And then 1985 and 1987, that stretch in there, it all came together for me. I was able to accomplish one of my goals, and one of my goals was to win myself a Silver Slugger Award at some point in time in my career, which I was able to do in 1987, hitting 303. And then, of course, it was at that moment in 1985 in the playoffs against the Dodgers that people started looking at me as much more than just a defensive player. It was that one home run that I hit in the playoffs, and I think more than anything, I was proving to myself that it could be done. Because there are always going to be doubters as to whether or not like you come in and for a lot of guys who come in as defensive players, you're never able to shake that tag. So you're always trying to erase that. But I realized that hey, I had to do this and do it for myself more than anything else. And I proved to myself that it could be done. And here again, for all the young people that listen, no success comes without some blood, sweat, and tears. You got
Mhm.
to put in the time, you got to put in the work. I love the process. And when I say the process, it means um, taking ground balls every day, continuing to work on the skill sets that you were born with. I had players ask me, they said, well, why you continue to work so hard? You got it made. No, yeah, I might have it made, but I got to make it better.
Mhm.
I got the degree of consistency with which, I was able to perform was what was important to me. I wanted to be a good, consistent big league ball player, and I think that over 19 years there was a degree of consistency to my work.
Oh, you could tell it, with the stats, and I know today we rely on so many analytics and stats. What are your thoughts on that? That everything is all analytical now, especially with a lot of these managers that come in. I know Billy Bean was big on that with the
Yeah,
A's, and now the Mets with David Stearns. Everything's
yeah.
analytics now. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me say this here. There's a place for analytics, but there are four things that are never going to change. You got to catch it, you got to throw it, you got to hit it, you got to run. That ain't ever going to change.
It's true.
And I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to reinvent the wheel. And there's no sense in trying to reinvent the wheel. When you got a guy out there who can move it up and down, in and out, change speeds, Yamamoto, it's a perfect example of that. You're not going to be able to hit a home run against him, especially when you get to the playoffs and World Series, to hit against pitchers who have the ability to move it up and down, in and out, and change speeds. It's not just about throwing hard. In many ways, I think it may be easier to hit today because, guys are trying to throw hard. And if they throw hard and there's not much movement, it's just a matter of timing. And
Mm,
so doing those little things every day, and I think we had a chance to see this was one of the best World Series, by the way, that we've seen in a long time because there was some good baseball played.
I agree.
Um, there was some great baseball played, and I think that during the course of the season, we got away from all of those little things, and I think the teams that did those little things every day or the teams that made it to the playoffs in the World Series. The Dodgers happen to be one of those teams who were very good. Both those teams are very good defensive ball clubs. And at one point there, it looked like the Toronto Blue Jays had, from a fundamental standpoint, they played better. They
Mhm,
played better there and stuff. But it really boils down to who takes advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves.
mhm.
And so that's what made this such a good series. You had good pitching, you had good defense. Um, everybody had their chance, and the Dodgers were able and I think because of their experience, were able to hang in there enough and made the big play when they had to.
Mhm.
They got a big home run from the catcher.
They did. Do you still secretly kind of on the side? I know you used to go to Dodgers games all the time when you were
Yeah,
a
yeah,
kid. You still like the Dodgers, even though
yeah,
you're the
yeah.
face of the Cardinals. You're a Cardinal
I'm a
icon.
National League. Yeah, I'm a National League guy and stuff. But more than that, it's just about seeing the game played the right way.
Hmm.
You just want to see it play. For a baseball purist, a 2-1 ball game or 1-0 ball game is okay. I think for people who maybe fly-by-nighters, it may be too slow for them. We were talking about some of the things that have been added to the game. I think the pitch clock has really added to the game. I have no problem with that. Um, what I do have a problem with is instant replay. Now, instant replay was designed, I think the concept and the idea was right to determine whether the ball was fair or foul or whether it went over the fence or not. The problem with that is that we instant replay everything now. you know,
True.
we're always waiting. So whatever time you gain from the clock, you lose with the instant replay. So from that standpoint, those are two things that I think that kind of changes. The other one is I got to mention this from a defensive standpoint, not being able to shift. That's
Mhm.
not that for as a defensive player, I should not be penalized because a guy can't hit the ball the other way.
It's true.
That's not my fault, and I think that's where we take away from the game a little bit there. Your skill set should be that you as a shortstop you should be able to roam and you should be able to have range. And if you can get a group of guys together who can all have range, that makes you a better club, and that comes from scouting and management and all of that stuff. But we're getting to a point now to where I'm hoping that we don't lose the human element. We're talking about now with a machine deciding whether it was a ball or strike and stuff. There's something to be said about the human element.
Hmm.
I think it's been proven time and time again that umpires, for the most part, get it right on bang bang plays. So let's keep that. Now that I say that in knowing that we lost the World Series in 1985
1985.
because we didn't have instant replay. But you know what? That's the way the ball bounces sometimes.
Mhm.
And those are the things that I think about when I look at the game today.
Absolutely. And Nico has a lot of range vocally as well, especially with being on American Idol. That you still see people that are still fans of yours from being on that season 4 and just learning about the whole process of being on there. What were some of the most important connections you were able to make with being on there still to this day that have helped you out? Despite, I know there were some things there with Simon Cowell with me doing my research that he was asking you if you ever had fights with your father, which is insane. All this personal stuff that just doesn't even matter. Like, well, who cares? Like, why?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no.
what were some of the most important connections you were able to make from your time there?
I think the most important connections were just the people, like the other contestants. Some of the matter of fact, like I was just talking to um my girlfriend's mother yesterday about Bo Bice, who was the runner-up to Carrie Underwood on our season. And he was my roommate throughout the whole time on American Idol. He was my buddy. And the whole time, like we thick as thieves. So him, Scott Sable, I still talk to Von Zell, Nadia Turner, Anthony Fedorov. So those connections with those people and keeping up with them because it's uh, kind of being like just a alumni class of a few people that had this rare experience of being top 10 American Idol finalists, especially in the early days before it changed. And because nowadays they let you play instruments, they give you mentors. Like I remember I was super upset because we didn't get any mentors, but the season after us, like Stevie Wonder was coming through, David Foster was coming through, and I'm like, where were all these people when we were there? So, um, but no, I think the most important connections, yeah, were just being around those people, um, and being able to share that experience with them, still talk about it, see everybody still growing and being productive and successful. So yeah, for me, man, it was just the people.
Mhm. This meeting with Michael Jackson had to have a huge impact on you during the bad tour when you were younger. Is there anyone else that you met that really gave you the most important words of advice that you might have been there? It's been like a Michael Jackson or something later on when you were able to understand things in a deeper level?
Honestly, looking back, man, just being with my dad, obviously I got to meet a whole bunch of people. Like I remember going to Houston and talking to David Justice all the time. Willie was always around, Vince, Terry Pendleton, all of these people, that I got to meet and be around. But I think the most important people that had the biggest impact on me as a human being and as an artist is would be my mom and my dad.
Mm.
And it's funny the story that dad you told earlier. I didn't know when you were uh would you say you were a junior and you didn't think
Mhm.
it was working out and then you called your
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And that's how I felt when I was in Hollywood on American Idol. I called my mom and was like, I don't think this is working out. I want to come home. And she was the one to tell me, like, well, just tough it out. Hang in there. I think you're in the right place. And I did, and that ended up working out. And in the same aspect of the advice that my dad would give me, um, as far as like staying on your grind and making sure that you put in the work so that it's second nature. You don't have to think about it, but you have to continue every single day to try and be better. And you're not competing with anybody else, you're competing with yourself. So my mom and my dad have been the biggest influences on my life and the biggest my biggest supporters uh throughout this whole journey for me. And a lot of people ask, if there was any pressure to play baseball. And he never, ever, ever pressured me to play baseball. Yeah, I did earlier on when I was younger, and it was fun. It was really fun. But that ball started coming by really quick. And so I was like, you know what? I might just stick with the music stuff. But no, it was never any pressure. It was always love from both of them. And I knew that once I showed my dad that I was super serious and I was taking my craft seriously and putting in that time and that effort and that work, that he'd be like, "Oh, you really want to do this?" So it's always been support from both of them, and that's my main thing, and that's why I'm still to this day, um, working as hard as I can to be the best person, singer, artist that I can be.
Absolutely. Have you had the chance to work with Nelly? I know your father and Nelly have done some things together as far as playing on the softball team in the early 2000s there for the charity event. Have you been able to work with Nelly or any of the St. Lunatics?
Yeah, so Nelly does this black and white ball every year at the end of the year. It's actually about to come up again this year. So when I had my band back maybe 2010 or 11, we performed at his black and white ball. And now that I'm with Dirty Mugs, we've done his black and white ball for the last, I think, 2 years. So yeah, we get to see Nelly. And then I did a song with Murphy Lee.
Mm.
Um, uh, when was that? Back in probably 2010, 2011 as well. So yeah, we see the St. Lunatics all the time, and it's all love. Everybody's super cool. Of course, Nelly's super cool. We got to meet Ashanti last time, so that was awesome. And it's a St. Louis family thing because they're good friends with Ronald Isley.
Icon.
My dad knows him as well. So it's a St. Louis family type of thing. So yeah, man, being able to be around them and see how they work. And every year when he does his black and white ball, he brings in different acts. So last year he brought in Neo and Monica. So it's and Bow Wow and Jermaine Dupri. So it's always fun to be a part of something like that.
That's legendary.
Hmm.
Those balls. Yeah, I can tell
Yeah.
that those. I was reading online, Ozzy. I don't know if this is true or not, but is it true that you had dinner with Muhammad Ali?
I did.
How was
I had a,
that?
I had a restaurant for 21 years in a place
Ozzy's.
here. Yeah, it's called Ozzie's at Westport Plaza. And one night, this was before the fights were shown everywhere. You had to get rights to it, and we usually got the rights to the fights. And so we got a call that said that, hey, Muhammad Ali would like to come up and watch the fight. And this was Riddick Bowe and God, Holyfield and Riddick Bowe. So I'm saying to myself, yeah, all right. So about 15 minutes, sure enough, Muhammad Ali comes through the front door with Ernie Banks. And of course, the whole restaurant just comes to their feet, because this guy was like, it's like the Pied Piper. And he's wonderful with people. And so we go in the back and we sit down and we watch the fight. And, just like we're sitting here talking, I had a chance to spend the whole evening with him and pick his brain about who was going to win. And I can remember him telling me, Riddick Bowe's too big. He's too big for him. He's too strong. And sure enough, Riddick Bowe won that fight and stuff. And Muhammad actually had come down to the ballpark a couple years before too, so I had met him before. But it was different in getting a chance to sit down and have dinner with the greatest. And man, I tell you, he was great with people. And even I, you learn things from people like that. You never turn down people for an autograph or anything, and it was just there was a wonderful evening.
I could tell it really touched you. And even
Yeah.
you taught your son to give back. He was out in LA, basically went out there with the Rams in 2014 and worked at a hospital for
Hmm.
7 years. But for some time during the pandemic, I heard you did some hospital work.
Yeah, when I was out there, I don't know if people might not know this, but LA is expensive. So
A
you know,
lot of places expensive.
so yeah, during that time, I was of course doing the music still, in a couple different bands, but you want that extra income because you want to be able to do stuff and eat and go out. So I worked at a hospital out there, doing a plethora of things like helping patients, doing the parking lot, fixing the gates in the parking lot. But it was a great experience, mainly because I got to help a lot of people. and it was a different thing every single day. And sometimes, you didn't know what was going on. I remember a specific example. A woman pulled up in the front of the hospital, and her husband was driving, pulled up, she's screaming, yelling and crying like, why would you do this to me? Why? I don't understand why you would do this to me. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, what is going on? You see the husband, and he's just getting out of the car. He's got his head down. He's getting everything out of the car, and she's still screaming, why? Why would you do this to me? Why? Why? And I'm like, ma'am, are you okay? She's like, no. He knows this was the last opportunity I had to get a Slurpee from 7-Eleven, and he didn't stop. And it was just like, so it just random craziness like that on a day-to-day basis. But just getting to see stuff like that and help people was one of my favorite things about working at the hospital. And then it also gave me an opportunity to still do my music throughout the day and throughout the night. So it was a great balance. And being back in California, because when he was playing in San Diego, we still had family and stuff out there. So going back and forth all the time we used to do. So being back out there was great too.
Absolutely. And Ozzie, because we spoke about fights. I mean, Simon Cowell was asking about it with your son for no reason. It's insane. We talked about Muhammad Ali. I wanted to get into this particular fight that happened at second base with Will Clark. What happened with that?
Ooh.
Well, we had won. We had beat them in the playoffs the year before, and we'd had some scraps on the field with them. And so they didn't take too kindly to the idea that, we weren't a home run hitting ball club. And so people thought we used smoke and mirrors. And we were never supposed to beat them with the team that we had. They were always better than we were. And I think that was part of what kind of led up to this thing. But back in the day, it's easier now because they can't touch anybody. But back in the day, the only protection you had was the bag. And if you allow the guy to slide on the other side of the bag, then somebody can get seriously injured. And so we had a couple instances where, guys were sliding on the other side of the bag. And I told the umpire, hey, you can't allow him to slide on the other side of the bag. He's starting to slide once he's past the bag. And I said that, somebody's going to get hurt. So long story short, we'd had a couple instances, and sure enough, he slides on the other side of the bag and it gets tied up with Jose Oquendo, and Oquendo hit him upside the head. And before you know it, I was at the bottom of the pack where you don't want to be. And I ended up with a fat lip, and I had to go out. We had something to do at Grant's farm that night, and I had to go out with a big lip and stuff. But it's all part of it. It was the only real big incident that we had, or I was really involved in my 19 years. And looking back on that, you look back and you say, hey, what could you have done that would have been different? But you just react to the situation at that particular time. And at that particular time, I saw my teammate about to get taken advantage of, and it was on.
Oh, I love that. And that's the thing too with your career, especially at the end with the tour. You were able to go on a tour, and everywhere that you went, you have standing ovations, especially for the Phillies. Everyone loved
Yeah,
you. Everyone loved the
yeah,
Wizard of Oz.
it was cool. I think that the one thing that everybody has in common is that they appreciate the effort. They understand talent and stuff when they see it. And when somebody's putting out and giving their all every day, I think people recognize that. And be it Philadelphia, New York, the way that you get back at a fan that's sitting there heckling you is to go out and make a play or do a thing and, give them a wink or whatever. And I had great relationships with all of the people that, excuse me, a lot of the people that came out there to give us a hard time as a team. But it's just wonderful. It was all about sport.
It is. And what was too, because after the World Series, you get this trade that happens, and then you lose Keith Hernandez. So how is
Yeah.
that losing him an all-star first baseman?
It was that was tough,
Hmm.
because Keith is one of those guys that and speaking of Keith, I just did the Gold Glove Awards last week
Hmm.
in New York. I always present to the shortstops. Keith presented to the first basemen, at lunch, we always have a lunch when we first get in on Friday. And I sat with Don Mattingly, Keith Hernandez, Dave Winfield. So that was, I mean, that was pretty cool because we had all had a chance to reminisce and talk about our particular era of baseball. And Dave got a chance to play with Don in New York, and then I played with Keith in St. Louis here. And they are two of the finest first basemen that the game has ever seen. And I think that those are two guys that certainly deserve to be in the Hall of Fame
I
when you
agree.
look back at their careers. And I in playing with Keith, I'd say he was the best first baseman that I ever had a chance to play with because he was a guy who could play from first base all the way to the third base line. Wasn't afraid to throw to a base. I think one of the drawbacks on a guy who will probably make the Hall of Fame at some point in time is Steve Garvey. And as great as Steve Garvey was he has great numbers and stuff, but Steve never threw to another base. And I think that's kind of been one of the drawbacks. But Keith Hernandez, man, I tell you, he could charge that line and play all the way to the third base line and make a play. And uh, he was smart enough to know when to come off the bag, when to stay on, and he could pick it. He could pick it over there, and he saved you, and it gives you so much more confidence when you have a person over there like a Mattingly or a Hernandez that no matter where you throw it, they're going to make the right decision, whether to stay on or get off and stuff. And it was one of the reasons that I won so many Gold Gloves.
13, it's a lot there. And
Yeah.
you get your Hall of Fame induction, first ballot, hands down, 2002, and it was no question about it. And at the end of your career too, because Whitey Hershog, he leaves the team, you have to be under Joe. You get there, Joe Torre, and that there were some things there with the incoming shortstop at that time, to where
Tony La Russa.
yeah, that's right, Tony La
Tony.
Russa. And there were some issues there at the end with the shortstop, the new guy that they bring in, and
Yeah.
you were actually outperforming him in
Mhm.
the preseason because he wanted to make an open competition.
Yeah. Here again, all of that's water under the bridge now, and we're all friends, and everything
Hmm.
is cool now, but when you're a player who have played as long as I have played, um, I think the only thing that you're asking is that people be honest. Just be honest. And I think that what happens sometimes is that people assume that when you reach a certain age, you can't do certain things. Now, that happens, but sometimes it's premature. They kick you out. They start introducing you as 35-year-old, 40-year-old, so forth and so on. And I think that for a lot of us, the one thing that we don't want to do is lie to ourselves. And I would never do anything that I felt was going to hurt my team, and especially with the career that I had. And so when he told me that it was an open competition, I welcomed that because I knew that I still had the ability to help my team win. And when that didn't pan out, it created a problem because, sure, yeah, I had a lot of pride and I wasn't trying to stop any progress. I was a player that was going to help the team in any way that I could. And if a young player beat me out, then so be it. I didn't think that that was the case. Um, and if given the opportunity for a lot of guys, and I think that you see now that there are guys who can or put themselves in a position to be able to play beyond 40, but you got to be in the right situation and you got to have someone who's willing to give you the opportunity, to give you that chance. And I think that it was decided before the season that I was not going to be the shortstop, and that didn't go over too well because of my competitiveness.
And the one thing I could really also give you a compliment on too is the loyalty that you had to the Cardinals. Because a lot of times players they'll want to leave and go to another team. Is that
Mhm.
you went out on top saying that I'm going to retire a Cardinal.
That's right. And all of my success had come here in St. Louis, and the people were so wonderful. And And I think I owed that to him. I think there are a lot of players, not only baseball but hockey and football players who came here and play, who still remain here, and it's because of the people.
St. Louis, definitely a loyal and united community, and they love their athletes and their heroes, such as you
Well,
guys
that's true.
here.
Yeah.
And Nico, I wanted to get into this acting work also that you have, especially with Dirty Mugs and with your band and upcoming work and
Mhm.
music and things like that. So I want to get into this movie with Sony Pictures, first movie that was able to be shot in St. Louis, in which your father was a part of it as a gardener. So let's get into this movie, this upcoming work that you have for music and film.
Yeah, so Soul on Fire is the name of the movie. It's actually out in theaters right now. So everybody needs to go check that out. My buddy actually went to go see it today and sent me screenshots. But it's about John O'Leary, who is a St. Louis native. Back in the 80s, had a tragic accident where 99, 100% of his body caught on fire. They weren't expecting him to make it. Jack Buck was actually, he heard about his story, was visiting him in the hospital, and miraculously, he was John started getting better, and eventually Jack brought him to see. He was a big Cardinals fan, so he brought John to see the Cardinals. Met my dad, so in the movie I get to play my dad.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
it was
I get to be a groundskeeper.
right. He gets to be a groundskeeper. I got him that part too, by the way. I said, why don't you put him in the movie? Just put him in the movie. Let him do something. No, but no, it's actually a really, really, really good movie. It's heartfelt. They had the premiere at Powell Symphony Hall here in St. Louis, which is beautiful. Um, John and his family are great people. And it brought all of St. Louis out and together. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience for him and his family and for everybody here in St. Louis. So I got to be a part of that. I'm actually right now, they keep calling me down. I'm at rehearsal right now. So we have a big show coming up. Dirty Mug's 15-year anniversary is coming up this Saturday, November 15th at Delmar Hall. Uh, Doors open at 7, show starts at 8 o'clock, and we've got some special guests coming in. It's been 15 years. Dee Dee James, he started Dirty Mugs with his friend Romeo, who's a big radio personality host in LA right now. And it's just honoring Dirty Mugs and the fans over the last 15 years. We're going to be doing some of our original material, debuting some of our original material, and we're going to be doing some of people's favorites. So like stuff like Can We Talk, Tevin Campbell. We're doing some Bobby Brown, Truth About Ronnie. She's a sweet little girl. You can treat her right real nice and hold her tight. Doing stuff like that. And I don't know, Dad, do you know Lakeside? The band
Oh,
Lakeside? We're
yeah,
doing some
Lakeside.
Lakeside too.
Okay, all
So
right.
so
Good throwback.
so yeah. So yeah, I'm about to go down there now, and get to rehearsal started. But yeah, man, everything that we've got going on, Soul on Fire, which is a beautiful movie. Everybody needs to go check that out. And then come see us on Saturday at Delmar Hall for our 15-year anniversary.
And I'm sure the fans are going to be looking forward to it. And Ozzy, we could speak on this too. Soul searching is something that you've done throughout your whole career, early life in college, of course, and then getting into baseball and your whole time with your career. What was some soul searching that you did after retiring, and even continue to do today? Because you do a lot of work with golf. I think you're the president
Yeah,
of your tournament down there in St. Louis for the PGA. So what are some other? Because you also do some work with the rehabilitation centers. You do your own
yeah.
work there with giving back as well.
Right. Well, I met some guys maybe 15, 20 years ago, chiropractors actually from Paducah, Kentucky. And they did some work on my shoulder to help me strengthen my shoulder and stuff. And they told me that there's so many people that were going from St. Louis down to Paducah, Kentucky. They said, if we open a business in St. Louis, would you be willing to be a part of it? And I did. And we do PRP, we do stem cell. All of the stuff that natural stuff that's going to allow you to live longer, be more flexible. And then I joined PGA Reach is a program. When I was growing up in Southern California, I was never introduced to the game of golf. And so when I retired, I did a thing for Whitey Herzog's golf tournament where I went out and hit the first tee one day, and I fell in love with the game. And I realized that for a lot of kids in the inner city, they they were never they weren't exposed to nothing but baseball, basketball, or football. And golf, not only the game of golf, but the business of golf is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So I felt that through this program with kids from the inner city, exposing them to the game and the business of golf would give them another alternative. And then we've added another pillar of veterans. And I'm often asked, well, what I'm, um, I'm asked, what is it that you miss the most? And the thing that I finally realized that you miss the most is not the competitiveness. What you miss the most is the camaraderie. And it's through the game of golf now that we've been able to get some guys who have come back from war with PTSD and all of those things, and we're giving them their lives back because they miss being around their buddies as well. So we're getting them back out and getting them back into society, and that's been probably one of the most rewarding parts of being the president of PGA Reach.
Amazing. Just the work that you've done throughout your career, the backflips. We can't forget about the backflips. I know everyone talks about that. It's like the
Yeah,
Jumpman logo for Jordan.
and didn't do that every day. People thought I did that every day. I did it the first and last day of every season, and then periodically the National League All-Star game. I would do it, but that was the fun part of the game, and one of the things that I could do as a young kid growing up in Southern California, there living across the street from a where they used to build pallets,
The
so there was always
sawdust.
plenty of sawdust. Yes, and so we learned to tumble in the sawdust, and I used to go to family fun centers on Thursdays and flip over the concrete from one trampoline to the other, and that was it. That's what we did as kids.
See, Nico, I think that's where you got your dancing from. Your father was very elusive and
Oh yeah, no,
into
he's a great
gymnastics.
dancer too. He's a great dancer too. At
I
least he
heard
thinks he
that.
is. He does a double the snap and the point. Yeah, that's it. That's his move right there. That's
Well,
his
Ozzy,
move.
what's your favorite song to dance to from your son?
Oh.
You know what? They cover so many songs, Max. I mean, it's fast. Now, I tell them all the time that they're too fast sometimes. They got to slow it down sometimes. We
Well,
gotta
so
we gotta
he
slow
came
down sometimes.
he he came to New Year's Eve last year and we were doing the Osley Brothers. And you guys were slow
Yeah.
dancing to that. We slowed it down for you. The
Mhm.
drifting on a
Yeah.
memory. Yeah. So he likes that. He
Yeah,
likes the
that's
fast stuff
cool.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Ozzy, I want to thank you both, Ozzy and Nico, for coming on the show. Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. First ballot, number one. We'll always remember the Wizard of Oz, Ozzie Smith, and Nico too. Now you have your own legacy that you're carrying on here with your R&B music, Dirty Mugs, your own band, and people have been following your journey since the early years of being seen with Ozzy's young kids singing national anthems at the Cardinal games and the old Bush Stadium, the new Bush Stadium. And that was going to be something too I want to ask you, Ozzy, is that did you take any memorabilia with you from the old Bush Stadium once they
No,
opened up the new one? Yeah.
we all had seats. We all had the opportunity to buy some seats from the old Bush Stadium. So
Wow.
I have those. Yes.
Amazing. See, and that's we've been following Nico since those days to American Idol to now the acting career, and you guys are well accomplished. And your father's also a piece of history as well as you, because your father was lived during the Watts riots, which is insane to learn about when doing my research on him. And
Mhm.
God bless you and just everything that you've done and everything that you've achieved and continue to do for the people out there, especially for St. Louis. I know you're very loved and respected. You're an icon. Thank you, Ozzie Smith and Nico, for coming on the show tonight. Any last words from you guys that you want to let your fans know about? Anything else that we didn't touch on?
No, Matt, thank you so much for having both of us. And for the
Yeah.
young people out there, I always leave them with that you only get out of it what you put in. If you don't put anything in, you shouldn't expect anything in return.
Well
Yes,
said.
indeed.
And let them know they can follow you on Instagram, everything to all the platforms they can follow you.
Yeah, you can OzzieSmith.com, PGAReach.com, Instagram. Where else am I? That's it. Nico, go ahead and give him yours.
Yeah, dirtymugs.com. You can get tickets for the show for this Saturday. Dirty Mugs, DIRTYMUGGS.com, or you can follow me on Instagram, Nikko NIKKOSTL.
There you have it. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming on the
All
show. Thank
right.
you to Debbie for setting this up. You guys are always
Right
welcome on
on.
the show anytime you have anything to promote, especially Nico with the music. I know music's constant. You're always releasing, going on
Yes,
tour.
sir.
You're always welcome on the show.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Take care, Ozzy and
All
Nico.
right.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
All right,
Thank
take care,
you.
brother.
Take
Peace.
care. Bye bye.